Today is Data Day. It's May 1st. It is time to revisit social media data and talk about that. Got a doctor's appointment and going to watch Peter Gray, Dr. Peter Gray, one of the most credible advocates for the self-directed learning approach. He's a member of the self-directed or the Alliance for Self-Directed Education, and he was one of the people that helped launch the Sudbury Valley school kind of up out into the limelight, the work that he published about his own kids attending that school. So I'm really excited to get a chance to meet him and introduce myself and talk about self-directed education here in Indiana. Really excited to hear what he has to say. I think the title of his talk is "What is Self-Directed Education and Why Does It Work?" So I'm really excited about that. That's a great opportunity. One thing that has been at the top of my mind this morning is the problem that we have with coercion in schools. And this topic comes up in discussions, especially on Twitter a lot. And I just kind of want to state it for the record that I'm not against any specific learning in any school setting. If you want to have a classical education approach, great. You want to do unschooling, great. You want to do self-directed learning, great. You want to do traditional model, great. I don't care. What I care about is how we deliver the curriculum. I think what we are delivering is pretty inconsequential. Because I think it's the relationships that matter. So if you're teaching in a traditional school and you're being, I don't know how to put it nicely, but you're being a bitch to your students, or you're being an ass, then it won't matter what you're trying to teach them, because that's what they're going to learn. And you're going to have students rebel against you, or they're just going to pay lip service and they're not going to really be learning what you gave them. If you earn their trust and you are credible, then there's a good chance that how you teach it won't matter as much, because in a lot of ways, you'll have built a brand with your students. So I think I'm saying a few different things, and it's kind of confusing. It's even confusing to me a little bit. How can there be a teacher that is hard on their kids that it seems to work? And then there's teachers who seem to have these relationships with their kids, but they can't get them to really do anything. And I think it comes down to trust and a little bit of personal boundaries, probably. Setting those boundaries of here's what's allowed in my classroom and here's what's not allowed in my classroom. And I think I'm going to find that with my own kids, that there's certain things that they get really good at around me, and then there's going to be other things that they don't do around me as well because of the way that I am. So that's something to wrestle with. And I think all of us, in our society, we're obsessed with specialization, people that are really good at one thing. And so we expect parents to be really good at every phase of parenting. And we're just not. We have a lot of flaws. We do a lot of things poorly. And the way that we raise our kids is kind of a consequence of that. So that's a little bit of a preview of my day. Going to the ear doctor, ear, nose, and throat specialist. Right before I started this vlog, I went to Oklahoma City for a workshop. I think that was after I started this, or before I started this. And so this is day 20, and my ears kind of popped as they normally do when you fly, but my right ear, I still can't hear out of it. Everything sounds muffled. I don't know if maybe the eardrum is popped. I've tried to clean it out, and nothing seems to be working. So going to the ear, nose, and throat specialist to have that looked at, and and see how I feel then. All right, I am driving to Chicago, Illinois. I can remember, man, it must be 16 years ago. I remember making this similar drive to see one of the coolest bands, Pavement. I watched Pavement. It was a sold-out show. I didn't even get to see them, and I waited around after the show to get an autograph. I got the autograph. I got to meet the band. Man, that was fun. Now, 15 years later, it's an entirely different story. I'm driving up to Chicago again to see someone that very few people know of again, to meet them. I mean, what is it in me that I'm drawn to these kind of underdog, underground ideas, and I just want to latch onto them. And I have the feeling, because this is in a small space, unless they're hosting this in the sanctuary of the church, I have a feeling that there's not going to be many people there. So this is Dr. Peter Gray, and from a self-directed learning, like, he's the most recognizable name, as far as I can tell, in the entire movement. And I don't think there are going to be very many people there. And that just goes to show how much work that we as a movement have to do. I mean, we're not doing a good enough job making the argument that children need to be more free. So I guess that's one of my goals, is to help that messaging. Now, why I first turned on the camera is I'm listening to Crushing It for the second time. And I heard him talking about YouTube at the very beginning of the book. This girl who's making a YouTube, she's making slime on YouTube and grossing 6 figures of income every month. And I'm just like, you know what? That's kind of what we're starting, is the YouTube school. It's not how to do YouTube. This is a YouTube kind of life now. You get to choose what you learn and what's valuable, and you get to pursue that with all that is within you. And that's how you prepare for life. None of this bullshit algebra. Everyone has to do it. Everyone has to do 4 credits of a foreign language. Everyone has to do 15 hours of literature or whatever it is, or composition. Yes, people need to probably learn how to write, but not every single person needs to write to the exact standard. If you're going to write, you need to write well. I'm not saying let's get rid of standards. I'm just saying let's stop applying all the standards to everyone in the exact same way, because that's what's being done right now. And engagement, if you watch it from the perspective of just the one poll, the Gallup 2015 student poll, engagement drops like a ski slope. Starting at around 5th grade, it peaks. 70% of the students are engaged in 5th grade. By the time it gets to 11th grade, and there's actually a little bit of an uptick once we get to the senior year, but by the time you get to 11th grade, you're at 30% are actively engaged in school. Now, I'll try to remember to link that in the comments or in the description, but that's enormous. I mean, and they detail in the poll, that's a pretty popular poll among educators. Gallup has credibility in the space, but that's enormous. From 70 to 30% drop. If you're a company and you drop by 40% of the market, there's a good chance that you're not going to be in business any longer. But schools, they don't have to worry about that. Schools, they can stay where the students are disengaged and it doesn't affect them. But that's not going to be the case anymore, because schools are going to start hemorrhaging students the more that families get a sense that self-directed education is not only more fun than school, and it's actually more effective at producing citizens of the world. And that's what Peter Gray is going to share tonight, So I can't wait to hopefully get some of that on camera and share it with you. Yeah, that's it. All right, I'm a little bit further on my trip now, and I'm looking forward to a talk with my Aunt Lisa. And before I talk with her, my uncle, her husband, has not been given very long to live, and it's just making. I'm taking. I don't know what they call that. I'm just kind of counting my blessings, and I hurt for her. One of the reasons I do is because when I think about my relationship with her, it obviously goes back years. She's my aunt, and she's seen me go through a lot. Some of it is really cool and kind of neat. Some of it's kind of like, meh, not that great. She really treated us kids, me and my siblings, as her own kids. We were some of the nieces and nephews that lived the closest to her, and she doesn't have kids, so she took us on a couple vacations that we couldn't afford to go on. And I can remember one thing that I really regret, and something that I'm going to really focus on during this conversation, is allowing her to ask questions. There's not many adults in my life that I think probably have cared for me probably as much as she has. I've spent countless nights at her house while her husband my uncle was away for work. She didn't like being alone, so one of us kids would come and stay there, and so she's just been so supportive, this whole time, and I don't think I've always, been grateful for that. And just in this moment, traveling, being on video, I am grateful. I want to be more grateful. So I'm looking forward to talking with her and just letting her ask as many questions as she wants. She's got a lot on her mind right now, so I just want to be there for her, and that's kind of what this school is all about. Is we understand that our kids learn through relationships, and so we need to be there in the times that they're struggling. That's when they're going to learn the most. Nice windy day out here. Power, courtesy of windfarms in northern Indiana. You can see them. And they're not very, they're kind of an eyesore. They get the job done. It's always good to harness the power of nature. Just arriving here in Chicago. Always liked this city. Has a very, I don't know what it is. It's got a name, something away from home. And so arriving at Tallgrass Sudbury School, right across the street from a public high school, if I remember right. And not exactly sure how I'm going to enter. So as far as I know, this is the only Sudbury school in Chicago, and maybe the only Democratic school, but I'm not really sure. And so here's the sign: Tallgrass Sudbury School, because life is not standardized. What is a question? So I'm here with Dr. Peter Gray, and Free to Learn. Going to have you sign that as well.
Sure.
What's one question that you wish that more people would ask you when they're talking about self-directed education, or they're talking about your work?
Wow, that's a question that I haven't thought about. I think truthfully, the question. I mean, it's a difficult question to answer because the questions I want them to ask are the questions that they have.
Yeah.
So pretty much the questions that they are asking me are the ones that I would want them to ask.
Okay, that's good.
So
Yeah.
just to give an example, probably it didn't come up that much here, but probably the most frequent question that's asked is, what do you think about computer play?
Yeah,
Because it's on
absolutely.
everybody's mind. Everybody's worried about that.
Yeah.
And so I'm always glad when that's asked because
Yeah.
we hear all this propaganda about how terrible computer play is, it's addictive and so on and so forth. And because I'm asked that question a lot, I've really looked into the research on it. And the research doesn't support all these myths about
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
it. So that's a question I'm glad people ask, and they generally do ask it. Those
Yeah.
people who are. In terms of other kinds of questions, I think that there are certain kinds of concerns that just run through our culture. So somebody's child has reached a certain age and can't read, hasn't learned how
Yeah.
to read, and people
Yeah.
get nervous about that.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad that they ask, if they're concerned about that, I'm glad that they ask that because I can tell them there are lots of children who are in self-directed education who don't learn how to read until later on.
Yeah.
And then they learn when they're
then they get it.
interested in it.
Yeah.
I think the main thing that it's hard for parents to accept in our culture because we are trained to believe that we are supposed to be responsible for everything our children do and learn, and if they're not learning what other children are learning, we're not doing our job somehow.
Yeah.
And I think that the main benefit that I can have in answering parents' questions is help them relax about it. Just let them, your child is going to be okay. One of the things that to me as a parent was valuable when my own son started at Sudbury Valley School is the staff at the school, because unlike teachers in a typical school who only see third graders if they're teaching third grade. So they know what third graders are like, but they don't know what happens with those kids later on.
Right.
Staff at a Sudbury school have seen development. They've seen how kids change. So almost any kind of thing you're worried about, you go to the staff at a Sudbury school if your kid and they know kids have been through that, right?
Awesome.
and they're now they're okay. So I think that helping parents just relax and then just enjoy their children and not worry so much about it.
That's awesome. Okay.